Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, for it is 2023 and it's time for us to kick off an all new year of esports sim racing at UKSimRacing. And well, what better way to kick off an all new year of racing, a whole new season of the Porsche Cup. It is time for season 5 and today we mark the raising of the curtain with rounds 1 and 2 here in the United Kingdom at the Oulton Park circuit. And as our drivers get ready to go, you can see them in the background, they're all itching to go racing. Indeed, we're absolutely itching to see how they all get on after the embers and the dust has settled from season 4 at the conclusion of 2022. We've got not long to go until our drivers turn their first laps in anger in the qualifying session that's coming up shortly. But first, let's take you through a little bit of administration and also welcome you all to another season of fantastic racing. This broadcast is being brought to you live from trackside here in the UK, and in the commentary booth you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and this broadcast is being brought to you by the official UKSimRacing YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com and search for UKSimRacing, you'll be able to tune in there. And indeed, with the chat available, we can say hello to all you guys and girls in the chat. Don't be shy, feel free to say hi, let me know how you're doing and what you're looking forward to tonight and who you're cheering on as well as we get ready to go with rounds 1 and 2. But indeed, with a new season, we've got much the same coming in terms of we have 2 rounds an evening with a sprint race ahead of a feature race, and more on the specific details about that in short order. We've also got the fact that it's the Porsche 992 Super Cup cars without traction control and ABS. But what is different, I hear you ask, given the fact that also our drivers will be allocated to gold and silver classes? There'll be a drivers' championship in both of those classes. There'll be a teams championship overall across the 2 classes. Well, the key difference is, as we come onto our calendar for this season, we have got an absolutely packed calendar for this season. You'll remember that we had 11 rounds in season 4, which saw us go to 6 venues, concluding at the Nürburgring Nordschleife Loop. Well, this season we have 9 venues we are visiting over the course of what is 9 weeks of racing. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, when we get our R's and our W's correct, it is going to be back-to-back, week-on-week racing at 9 different venues, and what brilliant venues we have, and we bring it all to a head today and bring it all together at the Oulton Park circuit here on the 5th of January 2023. But in a week's time, we'll be making our way over to Brazil for the Interlagos circuit. Of course, what other circuit could we feature in Brazil other than the Sao Paulo circuit in rounds 3 and 4? And then we'll be making our way back to the European continent for the recently introduced 2 iRacing circuit from France, which is the Magny-Cours circuit for rounds 5 and 6. That is going to be an absolute thriller, I can tell you that. With being a new circuit and new to a good number of our drivers, therefore the tensions are only going to be high, and that will be on the 19th of January before we make our way over to Germany for the Hockenheimring for rounds 7 and 8, the Tilke Classic circuit on the 26th of January. And then going into February for rounds 9 and 10, we'll make our way to Norway for the Rudskogen Motor Centre circuit, and there it's going to be tight, it's going to be twisty, it's going to be synonymous with Oulton Park in a way, except we'll be exchanging the British countryside for Norwegian woodland. But our drivers will be attacking the circuit on the 2nd of February before making their way across the Atlantic Ocean stateside to Belle Isle for the first of 2 venue visits in the United States back-to-back in rounds 11 and 12. We'll be in Detroit at Belle Isle, and what a brilliant city circuit it is. It is a street circuit like no other. Belle Isle, Monaco can hold its hat, but Belle Isle, I would argue, is the ultimate circuit if you want to do street racing in Porsche Cup cars, and you'll see that in rounds 11 and 12 on the 9th of February. And then a week later we're making our way to the classic American circuit, affectionately known as Road America, on the rounds 13 and 14. Now be on the 16th of February, and then we'll be heading into our penultimate pair of rounds and our penultimate venue visit in Spain in the Catalunya circuit, fully known as the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya, for rounds 15 and 16 on the 23rd of February, and then we'll bring it all to a close for our season finale pair of rounds. That'll be at Sebring back in the United States, and that'll be rounds 17 and 18 on the 2nd of March. Indeed, we have got 9 weeks of racing action, and we bring it all to the beginning today with Oulton Park for rounds 1 and 2. But of course, if we've got 18 rounds of racing and 9 venues to be visited over 9 weeks, we better introduce all of our drivers and teams. And well, as we can see here in terms of our team list, we have a good mixture of returnees from Season 4, veterans of the Porsche Cup Championship, and we've also got a good number of newcomers as well. And let's take you through them, starting off on the left-hand side of your screen with the Gold class. We can see that the Gold class will be made up of the number 4 car of Andy Jones, the number 43 car of Cameron Willesey, of course our Silver champion in Season 4. He's been automatically promoted to the Gold class, and he'll be applying his trade to the Gold class indeed. A very fast driver in the Silver class, deserved champion, and you may recall the magic he pulled at Spa-Francorchamps in Season 4 to keep a good number of gold drivers at bay for an overall podium in the silver car. Well, he'll be taking it to the tarmac in the gold class this time, and keep your eyes out for the number 43 driver. We'll also have Dan Blackwell in the 14 car. Emil Koopman's returning in the 911 car, and Emil Koopman's Mr. Unlucky in Season 4, the one driver with all the pace but just no luck in the races to be able to make it count. We hope his luck turns around this season. Joe Newman in the 997, Corey Lazarus, the driver from Australia but born and raised in New Zealand. We've seen him return as well in the 44 car. Lee Holmes in the 35 car. Marcel Fritsch in the number 7 car, new to the series, and welcome to him. Ryan Walker in the 97, Nathan Foster in the 52, Samuel K. Sprout in the number 66, Simon Bamber returning in the 912, Steve Hughes in the 17, and Tim Darracott from Effect Esports, of course, in the number 18. Those will be your gold drivers. Meanwhile, in the silver class on the right-hand side of your screen, again, some very familiar faces and some faces are new. We have the return of Alistair Hatcher in the 964, the newcomer of Ash England in the 34, Ashley Coverdale in the number 88, who you remember gradually improved over the course of the season and really started to rise in the silver standings. Craig Shill in the number 82, Darren Eilis in the number 23, Daz Fellows in the 404, Glenn Humberstone in the 212, Jack Ward in the 48, James Kersop in the 99, Matt Maddox in the number 20, Ross McPhail in the number 13, Roxanne Marshall in the number 26, and Shane Piggott in the number 27. And with his door number being 27, that's a good number because there are 27 drivers registered for this series, and we're going to be seeing close to the maximum number of them taken to the tarmac tonight at Oulton Park. But we should point out as well that it's completely open in the championships for Season 5. We're in the gold or the silver class, because in the gold class we do not have the return of our championship winner, entered into the Hall of Fame for the UKSimRacing Porsche Cup, of James Parker, of course, with his fantastic run of form in Season 4. He's not returning for this season due to personal circumstances. Nothing bad, but he's decided to give it a rest for this season, and that really does open things up for the purposes of all of our drivers involved. And the same in the silver class, of course, with our silver championship winner in Season 4, Cameron Willesee, promoted to gold. That means it is completely open in the silver class as well. We've got no returning champions to defend. It's all about who will be able to stamp their name into the annals of history in the UK Sim Racing Hall of Fame. Who will be our gold and silver champions come the end of it? We've got a long journey, and we're going to start to find out tonight. But of course, all these drivers will be spread either as privateers, which means they're not representing the team, or as part of teams, because there is a teams championship. And here are your teams entering into this series. We have 24-hour punty people consisting of Roxanne Marshall. We have the 3 teams from ATEC Tech Racing of Team Cyan, consisting of Alistair Hatcher and Craig Shill. Team Purple consists of Glenn Humberstone and Lee Holmes, and also Team Red, a new team for ATEC Tech Racing as of this season, and they'll consist of Dan Ellis and Shane Piggott, the 2 newcomers to the series as well. We have Apex Misters in the form of Emil Koopmans, BDM Racing, a new team in the form of Dan Fellows and Matt Maddox. We also have the New Zealand team of Blackout Motorsport, which consists of Corey Lazarus and Samuel K. Sproul, and we do also have DCW Racing returning, albeit not in full force with 6 drivers this time, only 1 driver representing them, and that will be Andy Jones. We also have Effect Esports there for Tim Darracott, Satellite Racing made up of Ryan Walker, Simam Racing, 2 teams from Simam Racing this season. We have their pro team of what will be Joe Newman and Nathan Foster, and then we have their academy team of Ashley Coverdale and Dan Blackwell. We also have Willesee Racing returning with the trio of Ash England, Karen Willesee and Jack Ward, and then last but not least we do have WS Racing Esports consisting of Marcel Frisch. As we now look to our circuit for today, having introduced our drivers and our teams, well, our circuit, of course, is the Oulton Park circuit. But in particular, with there being over 7 variants of the circuit, we've elected to race at the International Hislop course. Almost a complete course, but you'll notice the absence of the Britain's chicane. But this circuit, located in Little Budworth in the countryside of Cheshire in England and the United Kingdom, is a circuit which is much loved in the United Kingdom and indeed around the world, attracting year in, year out multiple racing series, racing from British Touring Car Championship all the way through to the obvious season opener of the British GT Championship. And again, Oulton Park will play host to that this season, and will consist of what will be 14 corners in all. The International Hislop course is a circuit like no other, because our drivers make the way across the start finish line up towards turn number 1. They'll make the way into a tricky right-hander consisting of 2 apexes and a major depression in between the apexes, and they'll need to get it right on the point if they want to keep the speed and make the way out of the corner in the run to turn number 2. Turn 2, a blind apex that drops all the way down into the descent into turn number 3, a long left-hander where it's all about throttle control before making their way in the long charge up towards the left-hand kink at turn number 4, where they'll have to lift off the throttle but avoid braking if they dare. Coming around turn number 4, it's a quick dash to the left-hand side of the road to brake hard for the turn 5 apex, Shell Oil's corner, before coming out of the heavily cambered corner and making their way through the kink of 6 before charging on past where the Britain chicane would be and heading down the back straight towards turns 7 and 8, the Hislop chicane. Into the braking zone for turns 7 and 8, they'll then exit out through turn number 9, a very tricky sequence, the chicane followed by the right handle, because it's all about trying to get the car from left to right and back and forth, and by doing so and transferring that weight successfully, they'll carry their speed all the way out through the kinks of 10 and 11, up the hill, and then into the braking zone for turn number 12. The right-hander, a very tricky one as they make their way through the double apex of turn 12, before charging into the final major corner of turn number 13, and it's through the descent and rise of turn 14 to make the way across the start-finish line and do it all over again. But we can't go racing without rules, and let's give you a quick recap of the rules for this series. They have not changed, bar one slight change, which we'll point out right at the end. In qualifying, it's a lone qualifying format as always, which means our drivers will take to an isolated instance of the circuit for themselves. So we will have over 20 drivers taking to the circuit in qualifying, but they'll all have the circuit of their own, and therefore they'll be able to put in their best possible times. And they'll have 8 minutes to set their best possible time. With that, no lap limitations. They have 8 minutes, and come the end of the 8 minutes, we bring it to a dead stop, and our drivers will then line up on the grid. As for the races shall commence via a standing start, as is the tradition, with the sprint race grid being set based on results of qualifying, and the feature race grid being a partial reverse grid based on results of the sprint race, with the top 8 positions inverted. And what does that mean in simple English? Well, that means if a driver wins the sprint race, they'll be starting in P8 on the grid for the feature race. Conversely, in P8, if you finish there for sprint race, then you'll be starting on pole for the purposes of the feature race. Meanwhile, if you finish 9th or down in the sprint race, that's where you'll be starting on the grid for the purposes of the feature race. There are no mandatory pit stop requirements in either of the races, so when we see a driver come into the pits, they've either picked up a drive-through penalty or they've got damage and they need to come into the pits for repair, and thankfully we do give them one fast repair available in each race, albeit a pit stop may knock them out of the proceedings, and a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 14 or more instant points. And this is the only change we made to the rule set this season. Last season it was 17 instant points, it has been dropped to 14 instant points. We've just been a little bit more tough in terms of scrutinizing contacts and instants and trying to bring them down as much as possible, and that's why we dropped it by 3 instant points there, but it shouldn't have too much an effect on the good old-fashioned racing that we've come to know and love. But with the rules covered, let's head back to our live cameras here and take you through our schedule for this evening in the season opener. Well, as you can see for rounds number 1 and 2, then in times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinated Time UTC, we'll be getting underway with our qualifying session in under 3 minutes time, 8 minutes of qualifying. All our drivers, of course, in their lone qualifying sessions looking to do their utmost and lay down a marker before they make their way to the grid for the sprint race, kicking off at approximately 10 past 8 this evening, and that'll be 12 minutes of racing action. We've not changed the race durations, it's a 12-minute sprint, and then we multiply that by 2.5 times to make it a 30-minute feature race that will be kicking off at approximately 8:30 this evening, albeit there will be a 5-minute break between the two races to give our drivers an opportunity to take a quick comfort break. But 2 races on the schedule for rounds 1 and 2, and well, as our drivers almost are set now, they've had their recent driver brief and a brief chat with series organiser Matty Wild, who's told them the do's and don'ts and introduced everyone to one another in the drivers briefing room. And now as our drivers get ready to go, we do look here to our drivers who are out on circuit at the moment, including the number 35 car here of Lee Holmes and 88 Tech Racing Team Purple, and as he makes his way out to turn at number 9 and into 10 and 11 here, flying on around right now, just getting himself nicely set. Indeed, we can see there in the final practice times right now, Karen Willisey seems to be the name at the top of the standings with a 129.740, but of course we can't read too heavily into that for the simple reason that practice sessions are not a true indicator of what the pace will be in qualifying and indeed in the race, because remember, this is an open setup series. Our drivers bring their setup of choice to each and every circuit. They choose how much fuel goes in the car, and therefore right now some drivers may be practicing heavy fuel loads for the purposes of, say, the feature race, whereas others may be going with the lightest possible fuel load in order to simulate qualifying, and some will be going for in between. And that could mean that, for example, Alistair Hatcher right now in the 88 Tech Racing Team Cyan car, the 964 makes his way through 10 and 11 as he comes on through. He may be P19 right now overall and P7 in class, but for all we know in qualifying, he could be the fastest man out there when he's given a light car and an empty piece of track. And that will be the big challenge, of course, that qualifying is going to be so critical given how tight the Oulton Park circuit is as he makes his way into the final major corner of 13. And we say hello to Abnormal there in the YouTube chat. But whilst we are waiting to go into qualifying, of course, ladies and gentlemen, we'd just like to remind you and let you know that UKSimRacing is affiliated with a number of different companies. And indeed, as if you go to our website, there's a way to give back. If you're a big fan of UKSimRacing and you are a fan of all the series we run, either as a driver or alternatively as a spectator, watching our broadcast week in, week out. But we are affiliated with a number of different companies. And if you do go to our website, you'll notice in the top left corner of the screen there a button button that's listed as discount/affiliate links, and if you do click on that button, you'll be taken to the following page with logos of all of our affiliates on screen. Now, in going to this page, if you click on any of those logos, you will effectively be taken to a web address with those companies, whereby if you decide to make a purchase for those companies, whether it be Swellion Meta, Sim Racing Coaching, Race Anywhere, Demon Tweaks, alternatively Amazon, you can make a purchase which will be automatically discounted for you, and in return we'll be receiving a kickback from your purchase. So it works out nicely for you, and it also works out for us at UKSimRacing, because as we are a non-profit organisation, all of our affiliate earnings shall be invested back into the community to fund future series, including cups such as the Porsche Cup, the upcoming GT3 League, of course, this weekend, and plenty of other series that we do have planned for the purposes of 2023. Additionally, some of our affiliates provide discount codes which are available in the UK Sim Racing Discord, so do remember, a little purchase can go a long way in supporting UK Sim Racing, and it's a short, sweet and simple way if you ever wonder how you can support UK Sim Racing. It's all through our affiliates. But right, now that's enough about our affiliates and our website, and we need to head back to those live pictures here as the checker flag comes out on the final practice warm-up session, and it is time for our drivers to take to the circuit in anger for the first time this season as they make their way into qualifying. And this is where it's going to be the test of who has the season opening pace. Well, we would argue that Cameron Willesee has been looking very fast, of course, a man who's been growing in pace over season 4 and grew so strongly in the end that he really did only have one rival take him all the way the distance, and it was Travis Linscombe-Hatfield, but the American wasn't able to stop the Briton from being able to secure his silver crown in season 4. But now with the gold tag against his name and therefore racing in the gold class, Cameron Willesee will want to make himself known in the class straight away. He won't want to be the silver guy who got promoted. He'll want to be the guy who's got the pace to take it to the very best in the gold class. And well, can he do that, of course? Meanwhile, also making his way around here is James Kersop heading on through into Shell's corner right now, turn number 5 hairpin. And you can just see from the camera angle there how heavily cambered it is and how aggressive our drivers can be on the throttle as they make the way on through. And of course, being aggressive on the throttle on a Porsche Cup car is not always successful in terms of the way you're going to be able to get that power down, for the simple reason these cars have no traction control, nor do they have any ABS or anti-lock braking system. As we see it there, Kersop cutting his way straight across what would have been the run into the Hislop chicane there, and I think just locking up the brakes on cold tyres and cold brakes in themselves, and that exactly articulates our point there. When you've got no ABS available, you have to modulate the brakes yourself as the driver, where you've got to gently apply them on and gradually bring them up to maximum force or close to maximum force, and any mistakes can lead to a significant lockup and cause the car to go flying on when you want it to stop for the purposes of a corner. But meanwhile, as we see Steve Hughes here making his way on through the chicane and up towards turn number 12 he goes. Well, he's looking good so far, is Steve Hughes, in terms of this warm-up lap. Indeed, all of our drivers right now just getting themselves clocked on in. There may be a little bit of early season cobwebs and pressure for some drives. Indeed, some nerves can always trickle on through, but as he makes his way on through turn number 12 and 13 very shortly, no sign of that from Steve Hughes, just easing himself into the mix as he comes to the line. And well, as he makes his way on through, we see Jack Ward doing the same here, and we are going to ride on board with Jack Ward for the purposes of our reference lap here to bring it all around and give you an idea of what it's like to run around the Oulton Park circuit. As he heads through the left-hand kink of 14, we bring up the dashboard in the bottom right corner of your screen, and let's take you around. So making his way into turn 1 here on the brakes, about 75 metres from corner apex down to 3rd gear, and powering out immediately there, taking full confidence. He makes his way into turn number 2. You notice it's blind as he drops down through the right-hander, and now onto the brakes gently for turn number 3, then squeezing them on and drop shifting to 3rd as he now gets back on the power and powers out the corner up to 4th down corner exit, and now heading all the way up towards turn number 4 in 5th gear, getting ready to do the lift here. A little bit of brake as well as he drops the speed but not the gear, and brings it over to the left-hand side for Shell Oils at turn 5 as he comes all the way down to 2nd gear and gets back on the power as soon as he hits the midpoint of the apex, and charges all the way up towards the chicane of Hislop now as he comes through the kink of 6. Flat out at this point, no regrets, no hesitation as he makes his way in the long run, and as he gets ready to go onto the brakes here, a short while to go for Jack Wood as he comes onto the brakes into the chicane and making his way on through the right into left and now back into the right-hander as he comes on through. And making his way through the right-hand corner at this point, now heading up towards what will be turn number 12 in quick succession as he comes through the double left of 10 and 11. We are noticing the circuit mount is slightly desynchronized. We'll try and fix that, ladies and gentlemen, but as he comes through the double right apex here, down into 3rd gear, back up to 4th when he clears the 2nd apex, and now heading on down towards turn number 13. full on the power as he gets onto the brakes now, dropping all the way down to second gear, goes a bit deep, Hurricane, a bit too much speed into the corner, and that is going to compromise what has otherwise been an absolutely smooth lap from Jack Ward, but thankfully he's still got 4 minutes to go at half the qualifying session, but that is a lap in the Porsche Cup car given to you by Jack Ward in the silver class. It was a 32.626, but I think he definitely was on there for a mid 31 as a minimum, if not a low 31, if it were not for that mistake, but still he's got time to make amends for it as he heads on down and around. But as he comes flying on through, we do also look to some drivers who've yet to put times on the board, including Joe Newman, as we say hello there to Richard Simnor in the YouTube chat, and also to Matty Wild. And well, there's a little bit of bias potentially in the chat. DCW Racing supporters are plenty there, as we do see our driver here, Joe Newman for SimRacing, making his way through the final kink and heading across the line. What's it going to be for Newman? Of course, applying his trade in the GT3 series in season 8 of that, and doing very well in the Porsche, now doing the same here in the Porsche Cup class. And what can he bring to the table? So far, it's a nice lap of P2 provisional with what was there, a 30.1, and the only driver faster than him by a single tenth is the Effect Esports driver here of Tim Darracott, as he makes his way down to the braking zone for his lap. And well, has Darracott found something that's given him the edge over everybody else, or has he just got it hooked up a little bit sooner? And could we see those lap times oscillate and turn tables as time wears on down? But what's also very interesting to see here, Shane Pigott on his debut, making his way down the back straight at the moment, and 8 tenths off of the fastest lap. But interestingly enough, P5 overall, and the silver driver currently 6 places clear of the next best placed silver class driver, and that being Roxanne Marshall, who we see here in the number 26 car for 24-hour punty people, as Marshall makes their way all the way down the back stretch. And it's very close in the silvers right now, but it does look as though Pigott a small way away in terms of pace. In fact, that small way is a lot bigger than it sounds when it's 7 tenths of a second between Pigott and Marshall, as Marshall heads on through his lap here and continues to flow on through. And you'll notice the direction change this chicane, it's all about managing that rear weight of the Porsche Cup car, because of course these cars, as close as possible to rear engine rear wheel drive, officially considered to be mid engine rear wheel drive with the engine placed behind the driver, but as close as possible to that rear axle. And a Porsche, of course, the original design's been focused around rear engine rear wheel drive with the engine placed over the rear axle, and therefore when you swing left right into those chicane type corners, you've got all that weight drifting around in the back of the car, and also with a light amount of fuel in the car, the fuel tank being towards the front of the car, not the rear typically, it does also cause that weight distribution to shake on around. But as we do see him making his way up towards turn number 1, we see David Walker there saying Tim Darracott is the GOAT, and well, it would seem that way right now. Tim Darracott is definitely flying. I can see we do have some fans of the Effect Esports driver, and we can see their Dad Time Racing saying there's no Twitch this season, no, all of your broadcasts will be brought to you live via YouTube this season. We decided to go for a full roster of live broadcasts, so no post-round broadcast this season as per the current schedule. It'll be live every Thursday for the 9 weeks, including right now. We've still got a minute left on the clock here in this qualifying session, but Darracott is the man on a mission. We're still a 10th an advantage, as we do also look to Simon Bamber here, and the gold driver right now making his way out of turn number 3 and up towards 4 in the 912 car, and it is very close in terms of that top 10 right now. P1 through to P10 separated by only 9 tenths of a second, but Lee Holmes goes purple and matches Tim Darracott's time down to the 1,000th, but it is by the 10,000th whereby Holmes is slower than Darracott, and that is absolutely incredible. 2 drivers with identical lap times, and it's only because Darracott is faster than 10,000ths that he will be the faster man currently in this qualifying session. But with 30 seconds left on the clock, and now our drivers making the way around here, we do believe they will not have the overtime to complete their final lap. They will be brought straight to the pits come the end of the 30 seconds, so it's almost done and dusted. But meanwhile, one driver setting one more lap on the board is Craig Shields. He comes across the timeline, improved in the first half of lap, currently P16. As he's crossed the line, he does not improve, but meanwhile, Roxanne Marshall by comparison does improve and returns to P2 in the silver class, P12 overall. But that is qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen, and it is Tim Darracott on pole, literally by 10,000ths, and Shane Pigott takes silver pole. But let's take you through that grid then for race number 1. So they line up as follows. So the season opening race of Season 5 of the Porsche Cup, hosted by UKSimRacing on iRacing. Tim Darracott takes pole position for Effect Esports, joined on the front row by Lee Holmes from the 88 Tech Racing Team at Purple. Behind him on row number 2, it'll be the combination of Joe Newman for SimRacing and Karen Willisey for Willisey Racing there, with the promotee in P4 there, making a great debut in the gold class. And then on the third row, it'll be WS Racing Esports' Marcel Fritsch, joined by Nathan Foster from SimRacing. Shane Piggott, your silver pole sitter, starts P7, kicking off the full throw for 88 Tech Racing Team Red, joined by SimRacing Academy's Dan Blackwell. And then on the fifth row, we have Samuel Sproul and Simon Bamber completing the top 10. Behind the Blackout Motorsport New Zealand driver on the grid in terms of the way they line up, Steve Hughes will be starting P11 on that sixth row, with Roxanne Marshall, our next silver driver, starting P12 for 24-hour punty people. Then in P13 is Ryan Walker for Satellite Racing, joined on the 7th row by James Kersop, the privateer. And then we have the silver pair of Alistair Hatcher and Craig Shield, one from 88 Tech Racing Team Cyan and the other from Team Cyan as well. And then on row number 9, Ross McVow and Emil Koopmans, the privateer, out qualifying the gold driver for Apex Missers. And then completing the top 20 is the pair of Jack Ward for Willisey Racing and Darren Ellis from 88 Tech Racing Team Red. And then on row number 11, Andrew Jones and Glenn Humberstone, neither driver putting in a time. And then we have Ashley Coverdale and Matt Maddox doing the same, starting from the 12th row of the grid. Matt Maddox in the last place on the grid, neither driver being able to set a time in the qualifying session. But still, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And qualifying is only one part of the story, albeit it is a big part of the story here, given the fact how tight this circuit is, how tricky qualifying is. But with that, it's time for the lights. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for Season 5 of the Porsche Cup as Tim Darracott looks to get a good start in the run down towards turn number 1. But look at Lee Holmes here getting the better launch off the line, up the inside immediately into turn number 1. And Lee Holmes nailing it off the launch, but now he's got plenty of work to do as Darracott tries to come back. Karen Willisey drops down to P5 behind Marcel Fritsch as they make their way into turn number 3. You can see up the inside is Nathan Foster. Meanwhile, further back we do have 2x2. Hurrah, hurrah, they come as we see James Kersop on the outside. We've got a car going round there, and I believe that may be Emil Koopmans. No, Emil Koopmans dodging all the instants there as our time screen's updated. I think Roxanne Marshall involved in that instant. We'll try and find out what exactly happened very shortly. But meanwhile, as everybody now makes their way line astern up towards the turn 5 hairpin, a lock up there for Craig Shield as Emil Koopmans looks the inside for Apex Missers and gets it done as he makes his way into another position up to P15 overall now, gaining 3 places at the start. But meanwhile, up front, we can see here Lee Holmes, after making the launch off the line to take the lead, he holds the advantage over Tim Darracott, albeit Darracott hot on his heels as they make the way through Hislop and now up towards turn number 12 they charge, but through the right and up the hill in towards the double left. And as they make the way on through, we can see Samuel Sproul meanwhile dropping a little bit back off the top 6 right now, but the Blackout Motorsport driver still staying in arm's reach. They make the way in towards turn 12 for the first time of asking, making the way through the right hander and coming all the way down and around here. And you'll notice there on the top of our screen we have either 12 laps or 12 minutes, where it definitely will be at 12 minutes of racing, and we'll get that cleared on screen very shortly. But as they make the way down to the braking zone, we can see a little bit further back there Dan Blackwell trying to take a look at Simon Bamber as they make the way into turn 13. No opportunity this time for the SimRacing Academy driver. He's going to have to wait his turn. So after one lap, it is Lee Holmes who leads ahead of Darracott in second, followed by Newman third, Marshall Fritsch in P4, followed by Nathan Foster in P5. Foster close on his heels. They make the way down towards turn number 2. Cameron Willisey also hooked in behind them now, followed by Samuel Sproul in P7, leading ahead of Shane Piggott, who's your silver leader in P8, ahead of Simon Bamber, followed by Dan Blackwell completing the top 10, and then Steve Hughes best of the rest in P11 at the moment, with 1 second gap to Ryan Walker behind as they make the way up towards turn number 4 once more. But as they head on through here and in the long charge now, everybody really settling into a rhythm, and this is where the challenge is going to be in terms of trying to find those opportunities. And we can confirm that Roxanne Marshall and Darren Ellis are both into the pits with damage to the car. But meanwhile, oh goodness me, and that is a disaster there for Glenn Humberstone, and I believe we just caught the tail end of it, as it looks like Ashley Coverdale and also Andrew Jones caught up in a major instant there in the run through turn 4 and up into 5. And I wouldn't be surprised, well, we've already got a jump to the pits, a toe to the pits for Glenn Humberstone, and I think Coverdale may be having to do the same very shortly. But meanwhile, Karen Willisey gets on through, Shane Piggott also sneaks through there, and what on earth has happened at Hislop? We've got a car off there, a heavily wounded car that taken to the grass, a car pointing the wrong way as well, and that is Samuel Sproul, who's waited to turn it on around. For one moment we go one lap, and then it's an instance left, right and centre here. Well, I can tell you one thing right now, it's a fiery start to the season, and hopefully they'll settle down soon, because we don't want any more potential retirements this early on, as they won't want any more damage on the cars going into the feature. But as I try to make the way across the timeline once again, we bring up the circuit map in the top right corner of your screen, which has been absent for a brief moment, and there it is as they make the way on through. And Lee Holmes right now charging on down in the round as he heads up towards turn number 3 once more, and the top 3 starting a breakaway with Fritsch in P4 staying clear of his rival behind the Karen Willisey, but not being able to catch up to the top 3 by comparison as they roll their way down and around. But as they come roaring on through here, we do clear the laps at the top of the screens because it is race time, not lap time. And as they make the way in towards turn number 4 at the moment, the Austrian driver here for WS Racing Esports having a strong start to his opening round, albeit he's still got some time to go. We've only cleared what is the best part of the opening 4 minutes as they make the way on through. But as we can see here, Ryan Walker making his way out to turn number 5 as well. Walker staying close to Hughes as we ride on board here with the Satellite Racing driver, and we bring the battle box up in the bottom right hand corner of your screen to keep track of who's battling who. And you can see here Walker right now half a second off the back of Hughes, not really gaining too much through the corners, but gaining a plethora of time on the straights. And I wonder if Walker is trying to run a very different setup compared to his peers around him, running a bit less downforce on the car. On this circuit, of course, you do want quite a lot of rear wing, given the fact there's not many straights. It's all focused around corners and apex speed. But the challenge with this is, we look behind him, there is Emil Koopmans, who you'll remember starting in P18. He's already up to P11 overall, P10 in class, and he's trying to pick his way into P9 in class ahead of Ryan Walker as they make the way out to turn 12 and down towards 13. But into the braking zone they come here, and no sign at the moment. Instead they have to wait the opportunity once more as they make the way out. You can see that Koopmans having to back off the throttle slightly, eager to make the pass, and he looks the inside here, but Walker just got so much speed on the straight by comparison. Even with Koopmans taking a brief tow, but it's in the corners where Walker is struggling by comparison as Koopmans here continues to probe and look for a way on through. But can he find it? Well, he's not going to find it into turn, but he's going to get very close to the rear as he almost takes the whole camera off the rear of the car there. But he has to back out after almost making an attack to the rear of Walker's car. But meanwhile, whilst we do have a brief respite in all the battling, we have an opportunity to take a look back at what exactly happened at the start of the race. Well, this was at the very beginning as we looked at Darren Ellis here making the way on down the hill. It wasn't them involved in the instant. It was Roxanne Marshall with contact there from one of the ATEC Tech racing cars, and Marshall causing the seas to part around them, as then we did have going into the side of them, I believe that was one of our silver drivers making contact with Marshall. So that's how it all kicked off there, and one of our drivers having a slow start. And as we return to the live pictures for a brief moment, we will also be taking a look back very shortly at what exactly happened to our drivers on the second lap. But Marshall and Darren Ellis coming together, and then we will take a look back at what happened on lap number 2, starting off with what happened to Glenn Humberstone in that major incident into turn number 5. Well, here it is, and coming up through the corner, a driver going slowly there, and I believe that may have been Ashley Coverdale who was going quite slowly on the corner, and as a result, Glenn Humberstone making that contact and getting caught. Well, in fact, that wasn't Ashley Coverdale. We're not quite sure who was going slow, but we take another look back, and Coverdale coming into this instant for SimRacing, and well, nowhere they could go other than into the side of the Wayward ATEC Tech car. And in the instant we had later on in the lap, what I believe it was Samuel Sproul who was caught up in that. So coming on through was the Hislop chicane. The SimRacing car coming back on the circuit. That was Nathan Foster, and Sproul there trying to balance the throttle, but in the end the car going around on the grass, and Sproul just waiting for everybody to pass before returning to the racing. So that explains what exactly happened in those 3 incidents that we've had so far. But meanwhile, as we look back here to Tim Darracott going quite slowly at the moment, as actually in fact we can confirm the car that was going slowly at turn number 4 on the second incident we saw Humberstone involved in, it was Ross McFowles. We see that McFowle lap down and letting the leaders on through, and Darracott right now, whilst we've been away for a brief moment, has been passed by Karen Willisey, only to then have himself back past Karen Willisey in the run out of what was turn 5 through to 6, the two of them battling side by side, and we will just take a look back at that as well. In fact, this was in the run to turn number 5, and as they made the way through the corner, well, in fact, it was just Tim Darracott fading in and out of existence there, a little bit of latency, and then everyone passing Ross McFowle on the inside. So no actual pass being made there. We'll correct ourselves and return to the live pictures, but that's enough of replays for now, as we still do have 4.5 minutes of racing to go, and as the time continues to trickle on here, we can tell you that Matt Maddox right now is gradually making some ground for BDM Racing, albeit with a damaged car, having picked up damage earlier on in the racing, currently running in P18 overall, P6 in class. He's not giving up here. and trying to run his damaged car all the way through to the end, and that is dogged spirit right there, and he's going for it, no holds barred, and to be fair, he could get some major points out of this. But meanwhile, as we look from our silver driver to a bit further up in the silver class, here's Alistair Hatcher right now, P15 overall, P4 in the class, and the 88 Tech Racing Team Cyan driver just keeping it smart and smooth, as he does have Sproul behind him as he heads on down towards turn number 3, and as he comes charging on down, Craig Shield just a bit further up the road. In fact, Craig Shield with an off track at turn number 3, only moments ago, getting it wrong, and well, Shield returning right now comfortably in P14 overall, losing a place overall to Nathan Foster, but not a class position. But meanwhile, we look back up towards the front of the field here, running in P3 overall and in the gold class is Marcel Fritsch, who's got ahead of Tim Darracott, and Darracott, of course, your pole sitter, literally by a whisker, and as they make the way through turns 10 and 11 right now, chasing after an attempt at the podium here, and of course, you do want to be as close as possible to the top if you're not close to P8s to try and get that reverse grid pole. Well, the sprint race having less points compared to the feature race, but every point counts as our driver makes their way down towards turn number 13 once again. You can see Darracott trying to tease out a move here versus Fritsch. He's trying to get Fritsch to go a little bit deep into the corner and react late under braking by just simply poking his nose out there and saying, am I coming off a racing line? I'm going to tease you about it. I don't know if I'm going to commit to it or not. But as they make their way into turn number 1 here, Fritsch showing no signs of reacting to Darracott. I think Darracott's going to have to do it the hard way, which is really forced the move as they make their way down the hill and towards turn number 3. Behind Howard, Dan Blackwell getting a better run out of turn number 1 as he chases after Piggott once again. And oh, goodness me, it's Shane Piggott there being tapped on the rear. And well, Blackwell just stopping the car in time. But here is Shane Piggott, who leading in the silver class for so long, he's now going to lose out after having such a grip on the lead as Jack Ward comes on through for UKSimRacing and just takes the lead. Now, I don't know if he's aware of the fact he's leading the silver class right now, but I think the team are going to be on the radio to him shortly and just say to him, if you have a gold driver behind you, don't get knocked about by them, just let them go, because that's exactly what's happened to Piggott there, albeit we're not saying it was intentional on those lines, but it was a tap on the rear by looks of things, and it's just sent Piggott deep. And as they make their way down through turn 6 and up towards turn number 7 once again, Jack Ward right now in a much advantageous position, and also on top of this, a little bit closer towards what would be that P8, and if there is any major instance, you never know, he could inherit reverse grid pole for all we know, as he makes his way through Hislop and up towards turn number what will be at 10 and 11 very shortly. Meanwhile, further back, Roxanne Marshall continue to crusade their way back up through the field as we see the number 26 driver here trying to hunt down Maddox right at the end in a fully repaired car, and as they go hunting out of Shellwell's corner, and they're going to have the run that they need here coming through the right-hander and heading on up towards what will be turn number 7. But you see Maddox going defensive. Marshall's going to be made to go all the way around the houses in the battle for P6 in class, but in the end, Maddox not having the overspeed and backing it off there and tucking back in behind, not wanting to be off the racing line, as meanwhile our race leader here, Lee Holmes, has gone on to the final lap and gone on to lap 1.5 minutes remaining. We will not get another lap in, or I think we won't. We may be very close to doing so, but it's going to require Lee Holmes to put in an absolute flyer of a lap here if we are going to creep a 9th lap into our sprint race, as he makes his way into the turn 5 hairpin once again. But as he comes on through the right-hander and now up towards turn number 7, we do look back to Ryan Walker and Nathan Foster. In fact, Nathan Foster, I believe, has just found his way past Jack Ward. Well, Jack Ward's let it go completely. We did see Nathan Foster getting quite close to the back of Jack Ward over the last couple of laps, but as they make the way on through at turn number 5, we are not going to take a look back at the moment. So we have got some overtakes potentially upcoming here, including what will be Dan Blackwell versus Emil Koopmans. Blackwell on the inside in towards his slot. Meanwhile, Koopmans on the outside. Koopmans going all for it, and Blackwell going to absolutely defend it to the death into the apex. And as they make their way on out there, Blackwell holds the position. Koopmans backs it off, and I think he'll try and get the run up towards 12 and 13, but he's not got long left as they make their way on through. Meanwhile, in the battle for P3, here is Fritsch with Darracott all over his rear, and Darracott's being made to look around the outside as we're going to have Fritsch defending hard. But as they come on through, we see our race leader here of Lee Holmes. The checker flag awaits him, and he will take the season opening win here at Oulton Park. Lee Holmes is your winner overall in the gold class ahead of Joe Newman P2. Marcel Fritsch holds on for the final spot of the podium. P3 ahead of Tim Darracott P4. Karen Willis, he comes on through P5, and it'll be Simon Bamber P6 ahead of Dan Blackwell, who beats Emil Koopmans to the line, P7, P8. Steve Hughes P9. Ryan Walker completes the overall top 10. Nathan Foster P11, and Jack Ward crosses the line, your silver winner, P12 overall in the season opening round ahead of Shane Piggott, who I think will be absolutely furious with losing out on the win there when he was leading by such a margin, but he's still got plenty of race time to go. Samuel Sproul P14, Craig Shield P15, Alistair Hatcher P16, with Craig Shield heading completing the silver podium. Ashley Coverdale P17 as he makes his way to the line, coming through the final corner of the SimRacing Academy driver, and as they come on through, Roxanne Marshall P18 behind them, with James Kersott P19, and then we will have Matt Maddox, our final finisher, on the lead lap, who will come on through to take P20, and we believe that Matt Maddox had quite the off track right at the end of this race after running for so long with damage. The damage finally got to him and the car, and it seems as though the only thing he can achieve is P20 overall, but still a valiant P8 in class ahead of Ross McPhail, Glenn Humberstone, Andrew Jones and Darren Ellis, who were not able to make the end of the race on the lead lap. But now, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a 2-minute breather, in fact, and we will very quickly take you through those results for the purposes of our first race. As we do get those results up on screen for you, we can see here, just to rephrase, and once again, Lee Holmes taking the win in round number 1 ahead of Joe Newman, with Marcel Fritsch completing the overall and the gold podium there, and Fritsch just holding Tim Darracott at bay in the run to the finish line. Cameron Willisey at P5 there on a great debut in the gold class of the Willisey Racing driver. I think eyeing up a podium, but you never know what could come in race number 2 here, with Simon Bamber P6, a lonely P6 of the privateer, but I'm certain he'll be looking to go a little bit further in round number 2. Dan Blackwell P7, Emil Koopmans P8 from P18 on the grid. An absolutely ferocious start to his season for Apex Missers. Steve Hughes P9, Ryan Walker P10, and then best the rest there, Nathan Foster P11, with Jack Ward, your silver winner, P12 for Willisey Racing, taking over the lead at the final curtain ahead of Shane Piggott for 88 Tech Racing Team Red, who finishes P2 in silver, P13 overall, and then Samuel Sproul at P14, with Craig Shield P15 completing the silver podium. The silver podium occupied by Jack Ward, Shane Piggott and Craig Shield, and then Alistair Hatch and Ashley Coverdale complete your top 5 of the silver class, P16, P17 overall, Roxanne Marshall P18, and as we continue on down the order there, James Kersott and Matt Maddox, the last of the finishers on the lead lap, with Ross McPhail and Glenn Humberstone finishing a lap down, P21, P22, Andrew Jones retiring from what was 6 laps from the end, P23, the DCW Racing driver, and Darren Ellis, our first retiree, finishing only 1 lap of the race, 88 Tech Racing Team Red, P24. But those are the finishing positions for round number 1, ladies and gentlemen. And as we do get ready to go once again here, we've not got long. We just bring up the schedule very shortly. We'll have our 30-minute feature race coming up in about a minute's time, if that, or 30 seconds time, until we get to the grid, and we won't be cutting away. Instead, we'll be cutting straight to the action as our drivers are now being asked to make their way to the grid. So as our drivers take to the grid once again then for round number 2, this is how they line up with the top 8 inverted grid. Emil Koopmans will take pole position, that P18 to P8 run, inheriting him at reverse grid pole for Apex Missers ahead of Dan Blackwell P2, and it will be Simon Bamber and Cameron Willisey on the second row together. 2 drivers with great opportunities, but can they keep Koopmans at bay? That's the question. Tim Darracott starts P5 for Effect Esports, alongside him Marcel Fritsch for P6 for WS Racing Esports, with Joe Newman and Lee Holmes completing the top 8. Your winner, of course, Lee Holmes last time out, now having to fight his way through the order. Steve Hughes and Ryan Walker start off on our 5th row, with Nathan Foster and Jack Ward completing our 6th row. Behind the silver winner in round number 1, Shane Piggott starts P13, alongside him Samuel Sproul, with Craig Shaw and Alistair Hatch on the 8th row, Ashley Coverdale and Roxanne Marshall on the 9th row, and James Kersott and Matt Maddox on the 10th row. Then on row number 11, Ross McPhail and Glenn Humberstone, and our final row made up of Andrew Jones and Darren Ellis, who'll be starting P23 and P24. But as the gridding process complete, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to go racing. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for round number 2 here in the feature at Oulton. And Emil Koopmans looks to get a good start here as he flies down towards turn number 1, but further back, Blackwell not having a good start. Meanwhile, Cameron Willisey makes it count as Darracott goes round the outside of Fritsch, but goes a little bit deep, but keeps it on the black stuff eventually as they make their way down towards turn number 3. Further back, meanwhile, we can see here Joe Newman and Lee Holmes battling side by side, but Newman there quite sensitive at the start and looking to get the run out of turn number 3 as further back, Glenn Humberstone here getting a good start as well. We've got 2 cars off. That's Andrew Jones coming on through. Ashley Coverdale, however, in contact with what was, I believe, Ellis as they made the way out of turn number 3. But meanwhile, further up the order as they come charge on through into Shell Oils. Steve Hughes not gaining any places, losing one at the very start of this race. He comes on through turn number 5, and as they make the way up towards turn number 7 now, everybody line astern for the time being in the long run as they head down the back straight. But Hughes here looking for the potential move on Bamber, and I think he might feel as though he's got a little bit of a pace advantage as they get ready to go onto the anchors. But the 2 privateers here not able to find one another alongside, but instead having to wait in formation as they make the way through Hislop, and now up towards turn number 12 they charge. But as they come roaring on through, we look from them to the race leaders here, particularly P2 driver Dan Blackwell in the 14 car for SimRacing Academy, and after a good start to round number 1, now he'll be looking to have a better race even more in race number 2 here as he tries to hold off Cameron Willisey, who's not making it easy for him as they make the way down towards turn number 13 for the first time under race conditions in round 2. Behind them you'll notice that Joe Newman trying to creep closer and closer to the back of Marcel Fritsch as well, and it does look like a number of drivers who are really trying to turn the tempo early. Of course, there is a downside to that, and we'll come on to it very shortly. But meanwhile, after 1 lap, it is Koopmans who lead to Apex Misses ahead of Blackwell P2, followed by Cameron Willisey P3, Darracott P4, followed by Marcel Frisch in P5, Newman hot on his heels P6, Holmes P7, Nathan Foster P8, and then we have Bamber and Hughes completing the top 10 with Ryan Walker P11, best of the rest there. Silver leader at the moment, Alistair Hatcher having gained 4 places off the start and jumped ahead of Jack Ward as they make the way on down the round through turn number 3 once more. But meanwhile, we've got a driver going very slowly at the back of the field, and that is Darren Eilis with Ross McFowle having dropped to a lap down already. We're not quite sure what's happened there. We will try and find out in a short order. But meanwhile, as we look to drivers battling a little bit further up the road, Kersop here battling with Bigger and trying to keep the silver driver, the fastest silver driver here today, as we understand it and reckon from qualifying and the sprint race. And Piggott right now having a disastrous start to his round number 2, having dropped 5 places. He's tucked into P18 overall here, but he's dropped 4 places in class, and it is not working out at all as he makes his way on down towards turn number 11, turn number 7 we should say, once again as he comes right on through, but still plenty of time, and it is a 30-minute race here, 2.5 times the race time duration, as we hear that Darren Ellis has jumped to the pits. He's been towed to the pitch due to damage on the car, but as they make the way on through here, we look to Glenn Humberstone a little bit further up the road, who's got the pressure of Andrew Jones, and remember the DCW Racing Gold driver here, trying to pick his way through the silvers right now after a difficult race number 1, and really trying to find his way back up into the top 10. He's got the pace to be there, but the number 4 driver is going to have to do it the hard way, given the fact the silvers won't want to give in as they make the way around. But meanwhile, Piggott up the inside there, James Kersop, to get the move done for what is P17. He's still got a long distance if he wants to chase down Alistair Hatcher, but he'll be able to find a way if he perseveres out, with there only being 3.5 seconds between them at the moment. Albeit that gap will gradually open up to begin with, as Piggott's got the offensive now from Kersop behind, as Piggott gets a poor run out of turn number 1, and Kersop backs out in the drop through 2 into 3 there, with Piggott making it absolutely difficult for him by saying, yeah, you can go for the move, but you're going to commit to a tight line through 2 and carry no speed into 3. Meanwhile, carrying speed into the next corner, Andrew Jones up the inside there. Again, Humberstone, he passes one of the silver train, as his next target will be a gold driver of Sproul, before he then makes his way out to Ward and Hatcher, the silver leaders just up ahead of him. Meanwhile, looking from them to inside the top 10, Simon Bamber continues to be chased by Steve Hughes. They make the way up towards turn number 7 once again into his lot. We reload the overlay so you get the circuit map as well, and as they come on through, we also bring up the battle box. Not sure why we keep losing the map, but also, speaking of someone losing it, that is a car off circuit and returning, and I believe that is Lee Holmes, who has got it so very, very wrong after an absolutely brilliant start to his day in round number 1. He's gone off at Hislop chicane, and now just ahead of him, Sproul versus Andrew Jones. Jones on the outside, they come into contact with one another, and they're both to the wall. Goodness me, only a couple of corners, and it's all kicked off between our gold drivers, and we can see here both drivers right now trying to limp their way back onto circuit. But for Sproul, it is a difficult day in the office, there's no doubt about it, as meanwhile one driver is not having a difficult day at the moment is Emil Koopmans, who is absolutely flying up front, going the fastest of everybody with 30.65 on that lap. As he comes running on down the hill, of course, like everybody else, Koopmans is going to have to worry about the fact that as time wears on in this race, tyre wear will start to really pick up. And in terms of the Oulton Park circuit, it is quite an aggressive circuit with regards to tyre wear, naturally, with the amount of hard work that goes into tyres for a lot of these medium and low speed corners. And therefore, I wonder if some drivers are just backing off the tempo right now and trying to save the tyres for the final 10 to 15 minutes race, that latter half, when they can really start to push hard versus the drivers who tax the car a little bit harder. Of course, we saw saw that in Season 4 with the amount of times drivers will try to push hard in the early opening at 20 minutes of the feature race, only to find they had no tyre life left going into the final 5 minutes, and they seem to fall off the tyre cliff, if you will. But we'll have to see what happens here, as meanwhile Cameron Willesey, I think, focusing more on trying to stay close to Blackwell and stay clear of Tim Darracott, and Darracott here really staying close to Willesey as they make the way through 10 and 11. But of course the challenge here is, as they make the way on through, do you push hard now to get the move done, or do you simply just stay right in the sights on the driver in front and look instead to try and put them under pressure and get them to make a mistake? Get them to take life out of the tyres. Well, right now, Newman is showing no signs of patience. Instead, he's showing signs of going for gold as the gold driver goes up the inside of his rival Fritsch and takes P5 off of the Austrian as they make the way through turn number 14 and onto another lap here. 6 minutes complete, 24 still to go. And as they come charging down towards turn number 1, this time the field is opened up to a degree, but the one thing that has opened up is an advantage between Jack Ward and Glenn Humberstone in the battle for the silver lead. Jack Ward ahead there of Lee Holmes, with Glenn Humberstone a further, what is 4 seconds back and running P2 in the class, with Alistair Hatcher staying hot on his heels as well. The two teammates here for 88 Racing Team making their way on down towards turn number 3 here, and I wonder whether Hatcher may feel as though he's a little bit faster compared to Humberstone at this point in the race, or whether they'll try and work some magic later on as they come charging on through turn number 3 and up towards 4. But as they make the way up towards what is turn number 4 at this point in time, we do take a look back at what happened moments ago. Firstly to Lee Holmes. Well, this was in the run into Hislop, hooks up turn 7, okay, gets 8 and takes it with a little bit too much throttle, and the car just kicks out on him. But then after that, then we take a look at what happened between Samuel Sproul, the New Zealander for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand, as he battled there with what was the 88 Tech car, and as that car rejoined on the circuit, Andrew Jones on the inside of him, and then onto the outside coming into 12. Oh, goodness me, I wonder if Sproul had a little bit of oversteer then on turn. It looked as though the car kicked out on him slightly. We will take another look back at that from a different camera angle if we can, but coming into the corner, looks like there was a little bit of a moment there for Sproul. Now, to be fair, whether there's latency contact with the car in front or whether he's hit the curb, not too clear to us, but it did look like the car butted out a little bit on the rear end, and in the moment, Andrew Jones being collected with him, it was very tight between the two of them, to be fair, so they may have just been trying to go too wide into a place where they didn't want to go too wide that early on in the race, but it was a very tricky moment for the pair of them, and it's cost them both dearly, particularly Jones, who's currently in the pit lane, and Sproul, who's running at the back of the field, P21. Jones still in the pits, P23 at the moment, a couple of laps down with repair work ongoing. But as they make the way on down the hill at this time, still plenty of time to go and plenty of surprises in store, there's no doubt about it. We look to Roxanne Marshall here as we ride on board with the 24-hour Punty People driver as they try to find their way past Alistair Hatcher for P3 in the silver class. Of course, Marshall showing a lot of pace in qualifying, in the early stages of the qualifying, really up then the silver class, and being reined in a little bit compared to the silver pole sitter, but still qualifying inside the top 5 and not having the greatest start today in round number 1, of course, but trying to make right or wrong in round 1 by chasing after Alistair Hatcher as they make the way down the back straight. We do hear that Dan Blackwell's had an absolute disastrous moment a little bit further up the road. In fact, we have got a lot of smoke up ahead of us as we see Roxanne Marshall coming into the sight at the instant, and that is Cameron Willesey, who's just rejoining at the moment. Well, what on earth's happened here? Well, Marshall's going to look for an opportunity to seize on the chaos, but there's no way through with Willesey there making it, so they've all got to go to the right-hand side. To be fair, Willesey's got to rejoin at some point, he would argue. You can understand as they make the way into turn number 12 right now. Marshall as close as you'll ever be to the back of Hatcher, but Hatcher in return keeping their cool and saying, you're not going to pass at this time, I've got the pace here to keep you at bay, as they make the way into turn number 13, but he goes deep, and in the process Marshall gets the run out of the corner, and now it's side by side in the run up towards turn number 2 as they come charging to the timeline, and now it'll be about who's running a little bit less rear wing, who can get the overspeed into the corner. Marshall's going to go all in here, and Hatcher's going to have to try and respond. There's a cutback attempt from Hatcher, but a tap to the rear of the car, and Roxanne Marshall gains P3 in the silver class as James Kersop now tries to get in on the action here and says, can you make it 2 for 1? And as they make the way down through turn number 3, Hatcher shuts the door firmly shut and says, no, you're going to have to work a little bit more for it, as they make the way up towards turn number 4. The privateer here, you have to imagine that James Kersop, if you want to give him a nickname right now, he is Mr. Opportunist, and to be fair, we love him for it because he's been looking to pick off moves left, right and centre. In round 1 he did it, and in round 2 he's doing the same as he makes his way through turn number 5 once again. But as he comes roaring on through, we take a look back at what on earth happened only a lap ago at Hislop chicane. We start off by focusing on Cameron Willisey here as he makes his way through. So there's Blackwell getting it wrong. There's Nathan Foster tapping the rear of Blackwell, and Cameron Willisey just a passenger as he tried to go the other side, and that is what led to everything going horrifically wrong for the group. And as we ride on board with Blackwell here to find out exactly what happened from his perspective, well, I think it's just going to be a case much like with Lee Holmes, just a bit too much power going through the corner, and yeah, indeed, then there was the tap from his fellow SimRacing driver from the SimRacing Pro team, if you will, and then the Academy driver also with a bit of contact with Cameron Willisey there, and I don't think it's more than a racing incident, to be fair, but a difficult one for them all. And right now they've all got to pick up the pieces and start again, including one driver here who's picking up the pieces. Lee Holmes battling with Blackwell as they make the way into turn number 1. Blackwell makes Lee Holmes go a little bit deep there as Holmes gives him the space into the corner, and as they make the way down towards turn number 3, Lee Holmes holds the position for now. And in fact, I believe Lee Holmes has actually just made the pass on Blackwell rather than having to defend fully against Blackwell, so Holmes has come on through for P9 overall and in class as they make the way up towards turn number 5. But first they must go for the left-hander forward as they come on through here. You can definitely see how Jack Ward trying to stay with these gold drivers, the silver leader right now with an advantage of only 2 seconds over Glenn Humberstone. But unfortunately, bad news for Ward right now. He is losing a lot of time to this man lap on lap. That last lap, Ward lost a whole 7/10 of a second to Glenn Humberstone. The ATEC Tech Racing Team Purple driver right now is absolutely flying at this point in the race. He's stripping at least 3/10 of a second a lap out of Ward, and that lead gap is coming down like a stone as they make their way through his lap and up towards what will be turn at number 12 once again. Roxanne Marshall not too far off the pace either, and in fact at the moment Roxanne Marshall, the fastest silver driver of them all, lapping in the 31s, the high 31s, the last lap of 31.8, whereas all the other leaders in the silver class running in the mid to low to high 32s, and of course that does sound like a wide range, but that's Ward in the high 32s, Muir Humberstone in the low 32s, and then we do have Alistair Hatcher behind Marshall in the mid 32s by comparison, but nobody quite able to creep into the 31s, unlike Marshall as they make the way through 13 and on towards the next lap as they come charged on through. We look to Lee Holmes once again, and Holmes right now comfortable this time and coming into turn 1, not as pressured by Dan Blackwell as they make the way in towards turn number 3, but charging on down. We do look to James Kersop here, I think has taken to the grass. Unfortunately, we've got a car off there as well, and that is Shane Piggott who has gone off. Now, was there more to the incident than just him going straight off? We'll find out very shortly, but we'll start off with what happened to James Kersop. Making his way up towards the final right-hander of the lap and onto the brakes. Nobody around. I think he's just gone in too hot, and indeed you see there with the brake disc glowing hot on the rear, and the car's just locked up at the rear. Oh goodness me! And then contact with Ashley Coverdale, who tried to go all the way round, I think carrying a bit too much speed in, and then Shane Piggott a little bit later on comes into the scene of the accident. The accident's already clear, but Piggott repeats essentially what just happened to his predecessor in terms of going on around. And the ATEC Tech Racing Team Red driver having a difficult day as we return to the live pictures here. And that explains what exactly happened at the corner. But meanwhile, Lee Holmes continues to hold off Dan Blackwell. But I think there's a bit more to it whilst we've been watching the replay of what exactly happened at turn 13. I think Holmes and Blackwell have had a little bit of an argument over that P9 position, and we'll try to find out what happened very shortly. But meanwhile, as the result of that argument, Jack Ward, your silver leader, P11 overall right now, is salivating at the prospect of trying to poke his way into the top 10 overall as he gets very close to the back of Dan Blackwell, but can't find a way on through there, and by going aggressive into turn 13 he's actually cost himself quite a bit of time as they make the way on towards another lap. And look who now stands within a second of the silver leader. It's his P2 challenger, Glenn Humberstone here, the ATEC Tech Racing Team Purple driver, giving a hot pursuit as they make the way on through, and Roxanne Marshall coming with the pair as they make the way down towards turn number 3. And well, it's a three-way fight for the lead, but we do know one thing about Jack Ward: he can definitely make that Porsche very wide if he needs to, and Glenn Humberstone of course will be looking to try and poke his nose in should Ward make even the slightest of errors. When it comes to the charging force, the unstoppable force versus the immovable object, will it be Humberstone or Ward who will be leading within the next couple of laps? Well, we'll have to wait and find out. And Marshall, of course, only 1.2 seconds back, and I think Marshall could afford to do some tyre saving at this point given the battle that's about to kick off in front. Marshall may just want to sit within a second of this and wait for when it really starts to slow down in terms of pace and when they start taking a major time out of each other. But as they come into his lap here, you can see how they are also starting to concertina slightly together as a trio, but also Blackwell Blackwell only 1.5 seconds up the road will be affording a distant tow to Jack Ward, and I think Ward he'll be grateful for all the straight line speed he can get in order just to give himself a little bit more breathing room in the day. But as they make their way up towards turn number 12 at the moment, we do see there in the YouTube chat Andrew Jones talking about a difficult day at the office in round 1 and round number 2, and saying about couldn't be helped. But at the same time, well, Andrew, it's been great seeing you out on circuit today, and we do hope to see you have a better day on circuit in a week's time in the DCW racing machine. As Blackwell into the pits here, and I think Blackwell may have a problem with the car that he's decided to come on in to get it repaired as he makes his way on through. Meanwhile, Maddox here parking it up on pit lane exit to respect everybody coming on through here, getting the warning to the BDM racing driver that he's got traffic coming on through, and decides to very slowly creep up to speed there. Very respectful of the Britons. They make the way now up to speed, and I believe Dan Blackwell in fact has already left the pit lane, so it's a drive-through penalty for Dan Blackwell as a simracing academy driver there. He's definitely been in the thick of it in this round, and as a result of that he has picked up a drive-through penalty for times 14 instance. But meanwhile, as he gets up to speed, he's still got plenty of time to go and a lot of pace at his fingertips, but closer to one another further up the road in the gold class, going from our driver who was in gold class position P10 to what is the battle for P7 in the class. Here's Steve Hughes being chased as we ride on board his gearbox by none other than Brian Walker as they make the way through at turn number 9. Now these two have been exchanging lap time for quite a bit this race so far. Opening few minutes, not really together, but now they are matching one another lap for lap. Only a tenth at most between the two of them. And Steve Hughes has been in the commanding position of holding the lead of this battle for P7 ahead of Ryan Walker, but Walker has been right there with him from corner to corner. But as they make the way down, they do have to be conscious of the fact that behind them is the second fastest gold driver on circuit of Lee Holmes as they make the way out of 13 and on towards the next lap. And I wonder whether Walker might try and use Holmes coming on through the order as an advantage there to get him closer to Hughes, or whether alternatively he'll decide to go defence and cost himself the time to Hughes. It's going to be an interesting conundrum given the fact they're not really close enough to the end of the race where defending for that ultimate position now takes priority. And I think if I was in Walker's shoes, if Holmes does get very close, I might try to see if he can help me get past Hughes, because you would imagine that Holmes would gradually come on through at a rate of attrition. But then again, Holmes has been very fast up front, but with what's happened in this race, perhaps the pace has been knocked out of the car, and indeed the drivers, they make the way into turn number 5 right now as they come on through. You can see there as they come out of the hairpin, two slightly different approaches to the corner. Hughes really focusing on getting a nice early apex and power. Meanwhile, Walker, by comparison, just going a little bit deeper to the apex and losing the rate which he can get on the throttle on corner exit, and that's caused him to fall back slightly in the run down the back straight, gaining in the tow. But they do stay with one another for the time being as they make them through, and Holmes now within 8 tenths and starting to inch ever closer and closer. But as they make the way on out of turn at number 9, we do say hello there to Daz, saying couldn't make it tonight, waiting for my new wheelbase gutted. We're gutted not to have you on circuit, Daz, but we do hope to have you on circuit in a week's time for rounds 3 and 4. We can't wait to see you on circuit. And as the drivers come charging on through here, it's nice to see so many of you enjoying the racing as we say hello there to Jay Winks and also to Richard Simnot and Bickley Motorsport as well. And I think that's everybody. If I've missed anybody, I do apologise to you, as it is the case that we've got so much racing going on here. We can't look away for 1 second as anything can happen, as even the opening 2 rounds of racing have proven this season so far, and we're not even at the end of the second round of it yet. But as they make the way on around here, our drives, we look to our race leader here. Things have calmed a little bit, and as soon as I say that, in fact, we look back here to the battle for P8, and Lee Holmes up the inside there of Ryan Walker. As soon as we cut away, Walker just going a little bit deep coming out of the opening corner, and Lee Holmes capitalising there with a run on the outside to turn number 2. But now can Walker stay with Lee Holmes in order to chase down Hughes, the closer rival, if you will, in terms of their respective pace? Meanwhile, because we cut across our fault, let's go back to our previous fault. Emil Koopmans, the leading Dutchman here, the flying Dutchman, if you will, for Apex Missers, as he makes his way through his lap. In terms of his pace at the moment, however, last lap of 31.4, driver behind him, Tim Darracott, of 30.88, and Darracott is gradually bringing that gap down as we look to Tim Darracott here making his way through turns 10 and 11. The Effect Esports driver, after a slow start to this round, is now starting to up the tempo. I think he played it quite conservatively early on, didn't want to pick up any damage on the car, but now he is really really starting to push the boat out. And as we do bring up the lap times on our screen here, and starting with the time delta, you'll notice, oh goodness me, and as we're seeing his praises, Darracott goes round into the grass, and that gap is going to be inverted now, as that is a mistake that's come too soon in the day for the Effect Esports driver, but he tries to bring it back on circuit. That's good, dropping down to at least P7 as the field comes on through, and Lee Holmes here might come on through past Darracott, and Lee Holmes at this point I think might have a slight smile on his face. He doesn't want to gain places, of course, through drivers going off. I think he'll realise that he's just passed the driver who's been the closest to him in terms of pace all day here at Oulton Park, as they make the way on down towards turn number 3 once again. But that was unexpected and not a welcome moment for Tim Darracott, and now he's got it all to do from P9, but still just shy of 10 minutes to go plus the final lap. Can he find a way to recover back into the top 5 as a minimum? Meanwhile, looking in the battle for the lead of the silver class, Jack Ward has broken away from Glenn Humberstone, but meanwhile Humberstone has fallen into the clutches of Roxanne Marshall, who's got very close over the course of the last couple of laps, and now the delta between the two of them only 4 attempts as they make the way into turn number 5, and as they come roaring on through the hairpin, well, Marshall not getting the better run out the corner, but definitely in the tow and will start to gain once again. Meanwhile, a little bit further down the order, we can tell you that in terms of retirements we have had 3 retirements in this race so far. Ashley covered out Andrew Jones and Darren Ellis, but beyond that we do still have 21 runners, 20 on the lead lap. Last year lead lap runners is James Kersop, and then we have, Matt Maddox, who is P21, a lap down on the field, but carrying on, and that's what it's all about, of course. You've got to be in it to win it, whether finishing the race in last, alternatively finishing the race in the lead. Every race finished is valuable, and right now, at the top of the spectrum in the silver class, Marshall and Humberstone definitely know they've got to be in it to win it to bring home that P2 in class, but in return, Jack Ward being given just enough space of the day to be able to cool down and just focus on pulling a small gap. Up to 1.7 seconds is Jack Ward, but Humberstone right now under huge pressure as we ride on board here, looking back from the rear of the ATEC Racing Team Purple Machine. You can see Marshall trying to probe for an opening as they go to the turn 1 corner, and as they do, he goes deep, and Humberstone in going deep gifts the move to Marshall as Marshall takes P2, and now with the time remaining, the question is, can Roxanne Marshall go hunting afterward? 2.2 seconds is the gap. Can we see the Briton hunt down a winner in round number 2? My gut feeling says at the rate Ox Marshall's in flying at, she'll be there on the final lap to try and go for the move for the win, but seeing is believing, of course, and we'll be waiting to see it, as meanwhile we look a little bit further up the road to Steve Hughes, who continues to try and charge away from Holmes behind, with Tim Darracott losing position and dropping down the order to P9. It means that Hughes now has the task of trying to hold on to P6 ahead of Lee Holmes, who is coming through at quite the rate as they make the way through turn number 9. But as they come up towards 12 at the moment, you can see that also Ryan Walker not losing touch from Lee Holmes, and I think Walker here playing the long-term card, which is to try and stay close to Holmes and use him as a buffer to get on past Hughes. But can he do it? That'll be the challenge, because of course every lap now Walker has got to be glued to the rear of Holmes' car in terms of nailing those apexes, bringing the speed down the straights in the tow, and every temp he loses, it's going to be even more pain compounding. It may cause him to drop out of the fight in the hunt for Hughes as they make the way in towards turn number 1, but as he heads across the timeline here, falling a little bit further back at the end of the lap, having a poor run out the final corner and losing 2 temps. In fact, I think Holmes right now really does need to get a bit closer, unless of course Hughes really digs in, entrenches himself and says, my day here today is in P6 in round number 2, and he's not going to be letting Holmes on through as they make the way up towards turn number 4. But meanwhile, looking from them to a bit further down the order, Craig Shield here, well, we can see the 88 Tech Racing Team Cyan car chasing after fellow 88 Tech Racing driver of Alistair Hatcher, and behind them they do have Dan Blackwell, the gold driver, is trying to come through the silver pair as they make their way in towards turn number 3, and Shield goes a little bit deep, and loses some speed on corner exit, and now Blackwell will be looking to try and come on through as he picks his opportunity, and Blackwell not going for it here, and I think backing out is a smart move here, because it's only really one way up to Shell Oils at turn 5, and you want to go for the move in the hairpin alternative on the run on the back straight. But whilst we've been looking at these guys, Lee Holmes has found his way past what is Steve Hughes, and we'll take a look back very shortly at how that was made. But for the moment, we stay glued here to Craig Shield as he tries to hold off Dan Blackwell, makes the car as wide as possible in the middle of the road. Of course, putting it there is going to make it tricky risky for Blackwell's. Blackwell tries to look up the inside. He goes all in on the brakes, and Schill there getting boxed in slightly from Hatcher, who goes a little bit early on the brakes and goes to the grass. And now Craig Schill is not going to be a happy man, I can tell you that, because right now he needs his teammate to get a move on for the simple reason, otherwise if he bogs down the exit of his chicane, he's going to be given all the run to Blackwell in the attempt to make a move, or Schill alternatively will need to try and force the issue on Hatcher and make a move himself as they make the way out of 11 in 12 and in towards 13, and it looks like Hatcher really struggling on the exit at 12 as they make the way into the right hander. I think Schill here is going to have to go for it, and indeed Hatcher goes deep, and as a result both Schill and Blackwell come on through, and Alistair Hatcher loses as he comes into the pits, and I think there is something wrong with the car for Hatcher as he makes his way on through. Meanwhile, we can see a Blackwell up the inside of the Wiz Craig Schill and covers it off there as they make the way down towards turn number 2, almost goes over deep into the corner of 1, but just about makes it as he comes on down through 3, and Craig Schill goes deep, and in return Cameron Willesey now will look at this, rub his hands together and think they're still racing to go as they make the way up towards turn number 5. But whilst all this has been happening, meanwhile we do look back to Simon Bamber here, who's got Lee Holmes closing in on him, and Steve Hughes has still got Ryan Walker right there with him. And how, I hear you ask, did Lee Holmes find his way past Steve Hughes? Well, this is how it happened. So as they made the way into turn number 5, you'll see that Steve Hughes goes a little bit deep, and Lee Holmes simply sees the space on the inside, hooks it up nicely and gets it done. But to be fair to Steve Hughes, whilst he may have gone deep, they didn't really lose much time and gained a bit of a run down the back straight behind Holmes. But Ryan Walker, staying close enough in the end, has been able to stay in the fight and will now be right there with them as they make the way on around. But they charge out to turn 13 and up towards another lap. Not long to go now as they make the way towards turn number 1 on lap number 18 under race conditions. We've still got 4 minutes to go and approximately 3 laps with it, including the one they've just gone on to. And Simon Bamber now will be the next target for Lee Holmes to try and charge his way past. But of course, one thing we do know about Simon Bamber is a very strong defensive driver when he gets it right. And they're going a little bit deep out of 3, but he's just carried enough speed. I think he's going to make it very difficult here for what is Holmes to try and make the move into 4. And indeed, Holmes has to back off as they make the way into turn number 5. Onto the brakes they go. And whilst this is happening, meanwhile, Emil Koopmans, your race leader, has been caught by Joe Newman, the Apex Missers driver, has got Joe Newman right behind him, and we ride on board here with the racing drivers. Contact between the two of them, and Newman backs off there to let Koopmans return. Well, that is great sportsmanship being shown, and just as we rode on board, he took a little look to the inside. I think he thought Koopmans was going to miss the apex of 9, and as a result go overly deep, but in the end the contact happened, but they both survived it, and they go racing once again with the reset. And as they make the way out, drawn up towards 13, we do have Marcel Fritsch only 1.6 seconds behind, so these guys can't afford to spend too much time fighting. As always, Fritsch will come in and make it a three-way battle for the win in the gold class and overall, but Koopmans right now definitely under a lot of pressure as they make the way in towards turn number 1. Once again, 2 more laps to go, 2.5 minutes on the clock, and as they make the way through turn number 1, Joe Newman, I think, salivating at the prospect of bringing home a win in the season opening venue as they make the way down towards 3. As they come down to the brakes here, I think it's in the latter of the lap where Koopmans is really struggling. When we go into the low speed apexes, I think for medium to high speed apexes, Koopmans has got it hooked up, but it's when the car really starts to focus more on that low speed handling, the tyres may just not have the life anymore that he so desires. Meanwhile, looking from them briefly, we also do have quite the coming together here from the 88 Tech Racing team, where we do have Alistair Hatcher ahead of Schill, and then we do have Piggott behind them, and that is purple ahead of blue ahead of red. All 3 colours of the spectrum of 88 Tech Racing. They're battling for what is P5 in class, with Ross McPhail into the pit lane as we got a car around, and that is Shane Piggott going on around on the exit of turn 13, and with that he's going to lose out to a degree in that battle. But with McPhail in the pit lane at the moment, he'll still gain P6 of McPhail, we believe, as meanwhile we must cut away from these guys back to your leaders at the moment, and we see Emil Koopmans here on the run through turn number 12, and still really having to keep one eye ahead and one eye behind because there's no signs of Newman falling off the pace as they make the way down to towards turn number 13, but as they come on down into the braking zone and roaring their way through the right-hander, Newman right now only has one more lap to go, and he gets an absolutely colossal run out the final corner, and as they make their way towards turn 1, it's final lap, a minute to go, and Newman on the inside, Koopmans on the outside, and you could see Newman knew that Koopmans was going to try and go for the cutback there as Koopmans went to turn in and instead found a face for the simracing, and as they make their way down towards turn 3, it's side by side, they come through the long left, and as they do, Koopmans on the inside, Newman's on the outside, it's the charge down towards 4, surely they're not going to go side by side through the left-hander. If they do, they're both going to have to back out. It's going to be who's braver, and as they make their way through, enough space afforded, Newman's on the inside into 5, onto the brakes they go, there's a lock-up from Koopmans, and Koopmans glides sideways, and as he returns, there's Fritsch coming on through. Koopmans tries to shut the door, but Fritsch forces it back open and moves up into P2, and Koopmans with a brilliant side-by-side battle. It was one lock-up, and then there was the difference between him leading and Newman taking the lead, and now Koopmans has to try and find a way back into P2 right at the very end, because the clock strikes 30 minutes. The checker flag will be out come the end of this lap. Meanwhile, Ryan Walker and Steve Hughes is reaching boiling point as they make the way down towards turn number 7 onto the brakes, and that's going to be Walker on the inside as they come on through. But meanwhile, in late drama, this is Marcel Fritsch. He's got ahead. Joe Newman has got off circuit. We're not sure what's happened, but he's had an off and has dropped down to P4. Marcel Fritsch leads this race going into the final major corner. He comes off Koopmans. Koopmans swings back to the outside. Fritsch is not letting this go at all, and as they come on through, it's going to be a drag race for the line, but I think Fritsch has done it. He's going to take the win as he crosses the line. He is your winner for WS Racing Esports in round number 2 ahead of Emil Koopmans. Nathan Foster takes P3, completing the overall podium, and then it will be Joe Newman P4. We're not sure what happened right at the end, but we will find out. Simon Bamber P5 ahead of Lee Holmes P6. A great recovery from Lee Holmes after a difficult start. Ryan Walker P7 ahead of Steve Hughes P8. And then it's Tim Darracott P9 in a difficult round number 2 for the gold driver. And Jack Wood crosses the line, your winner in the silver class in round 2. Congratulations to him ahead of Glenn Humberstone, who finishes P11, best of the rest overall, but P2 in the silver class. Roxanne Marshall in the end, just not enough in the tank to find a way higher than P3 in the silver class. Still a brilliant drive from Marshall, P12 overall, ahead of Cameron Willisey. And there'll be Dan Blackwell crosses the line, P14 ahead of Samuel Sproul, as we see there the New Zealander crossing the line, P15, Alistair Hatcher P16, and then it will be Shane Piggott who comes on home P17 with Craig Shield battling there with Ross McFowle right in, and McFowle's going to try and make the move here, gives a little bit of oversteer, how it's going to be a drag race to the line, and I think Shield's just going to hold on to P18, P6 in the silver class ahead of his silver rival of McFowle, who finishes P19 overall, and it will be James Kersop who will be your last finisher on the lead lap as he comes on through the final corner here, and will the privateer, after a difficult midpoint in the race, never gave up and will finish P20 overall, P18 class ahead of Matt Maddox, Ashley Coverdale, Andrew Jones and Darren Ellis, all retiring multiple laps before the end of the race or finishing multiple laps down. But what a fantastic end to the round number 2 race here at Oulton Park, and goodness me, as our drivers make the way into the pit lane now, we are going to find out about what happened to Joe Newman right at the end. We are just getting that keyed up for you, ladies and gentlemen. But after a fantastic battle into turn number 5, we have got the replay, and here it is. This is what happened to Joe Newman on the final lap. Well, we only just see it there very briefly, but an off-track and then contact with Fritsch as he tried to return. So I think there is a lot more to it than just an off-track. I think he went a little bit deep coming into turn number 8, and in return got elbowed out there as he tried to bring it back on quite sensitively. So there might be a little bit of a stewarding decision hanging over the results of what is round number 2, given that, subject to, of course, whether it is reviewed as a post-round incident. All stewarding done post-round, not live, of course. But just to give you the full story of what exactly happened there, we do take a look back to that absolutely tremendous battle between Joe Newman and Emil Koopmans. Koopmans on the outside here, and in the end a lock-up being the difference between the two of them. But as they came on down, Koopmans in the end with a little bit of contact with Fritsch, but we focus of course on Joe Newman as he made his way down the back straight, and I think here he may have just made an error, and that error in the end got compounded with Fritsch coming on through. So onto the brakes he went, and as he did into turn 7 fine, but here it is, and you can see he's carried too much speed into 7, goes deep into 8 on the brakes, and has to let the car go. And as he returns, tries to take the apex of turn 9, leaves the door open, however, and, well, Fritsch in the end sees the door open and gives it the elbow, and Newman there sent to the grass and losing more than just one place, losing 3 places and dropping to P4 right at the end. And it was Fritsch who held off Koopmans all the way to the line as they made their way out towards the final corner. Well, I think the WS Racing Esports driver would say that was a racing incident. We're not going to give our thoughts on it for the simple reason that's what the stewards do. We're in the commentary booth. But as they make their way out to the final corner, Koopmans there trying to get the run, but a bit too much power oversteer, and Fritsch taking the win at the line. But as we now return to those live pictures, of course, the racing complete. Let's take you through those results from round number 2. But okay, after what is 30 minutes of racing, ladies and gentlemen, I must admit I'm absolutely speechless. If this is the way that all 18 rounds of racing are going to go, I don't think I'm going to have a voice left after half the season, let alone the full season, but we'll do our best. And round number 2 concluded with Marcel Fritsch taking the win for WS Racing Esports, half a second clear of Emil Koopmans, the Apex Masters drive leading for so long and losing out right at the end in a brilliant battle with Joe Newman and then Marcel Fritsch to the line, and then Nathan Foster completing the overall and the gold podium in P3 there for SimRacing. Picking up where his teammate dropped off, and the SimRacing pair finishing P3 at P4. A great result for them, with Simon Bamber P5 behind Joe Newman, and the privateer holding on to another spot in the top 5 with Lee Holmes P6, the ATEC Tech Racing Team Purple driver, losing out early on in the race but recovering all the way out to P6. Clearing Ryan Walker, Steve Hughes, Tim Darracott and Jack Ward along the way. Jack Ward, your silver class winner in round number 2, having a fantastic day at Oulton Park for the Willesee Racing driver, making it 2 superb results out of 2, and then best of the rest there in P11. But P2 in silver class, Glenn Humberstone for ATEC Tech Racing Team Purple, ahead of Roxanne Marshall, P12, third place in the silver class there for 24-hour punty people. Karen Willesee, P13, with a difficult midpoint, of course, losing out, but still plenty to talk about for the Willesee Racing driver, including his qualifying pace. Dan Blackwell P14 there, another driver who had a lot of pace today but just did not have the luck to go with it. And Samuel Sproul P15 there for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand, ahead of Craig Shield, Ross McVow and James Kersop completing the top 18. And as we continue our way on down the finishing order here, we can see Shane Piggott P19, Alistair Hatcher P20, and then not finishing on the lead lap outside the top 20 as well, Matt Maddox P21, 2 laps down. And then our retirees as Ashley Coverdale, Andrew Jones and Darren Ellis. But what fantastic racing all the way through, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations to all of our drivers who made the checkered flag in either or both of the races. And well, now it's time for us to get ready for our post-round interviews. We'll be approximately 5 to 10 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere. You won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, apologies for the slight delay. We did have a slight technical issue that we were working through with regards to making sure that we could hear our interviewees this evening, but we've been able to resolve that and all is sorted. Of course, it wouldn't be the start of a season without a couple of technical hiccups along the way, but they are all done and dusted. But without further ado, it is time for us to kick off our post-round interviews with our selected drivers, and we'll be starting off with hearing from the silver driver of Craig Shill in the number 82 car for 88 Tech Racing Team Cyan, as he is about to join me in the interview room. And in fact, as he does, well, in fact, I'm trying to get him to join me at the moment, but he doesn't seem to be able to join me right now. Another slight technical issue has occurred, so we are just going to try and work our way around that. Give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back and ready to kick off our interview with Craig Shill. And as we do go to him instead of having him join us in the interview room, which seems to have been locked out for everyone bar myself, Craig, a great start to your season in the Porsche Cup Season 5 with a third placing class in the sprint and a sixth placing class in the feature. How do you reflect on your season debut at Oulton Park?
To be honest, I didn't actually know where I was running. I was just driving around. Yeah, it was good. I like Oulton Park. It's a nice circuit to drive at. Porsche Cup, new to it, so still learning the car at the moment.
Oh, indeed. Well, you may have been new to the car today. Indeed, Oulton Park driving on around it. A tricky combination at that. But given you're relatively new to the Porsche Cup car, what was your focus going into tonight beyond learning the car? Was there anything particular that you were keeping your eyes out for?
Basically, I was going to make the best of any situations that come my way with other people fighting, and just drive my own race. I know I can drive round the circuit, so it's basically get round without either spinning or taking half the grid out. That was literally the only aim I had really tonight.
Oh, indeed. Well, keeping that aim in mind, of course, you started off with a solid performance in qualifying. Not all the way up the top there with regards to the lap times being set by your peers necessarily, but still fighting for a good place in the midfield. What would be your reflection on qualifying?
To be honest with you, qualifying and me never seem to work. Every league I drive, I can't seem to get the pace for qualifying. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to work on it. It is literally the one thing I need to work on. But my qualifying pace is slow. So I kind of just qualify wherever I can and then work it out in the race, because I know race pace I seem to have. So yeah, I do need to work on my qualifying.
Well, with the need to work on qualifying, which is something that can, of course, come with time, let's take a look at your sprint race. Of course, a reasonable start in your sprint and then going deeper and deeper into the race, started to make your way up the order. Could you believe it when you were running a little bit further up compared to where you qualified and started to head towards P3?
Yeah, it was... I think I just, like I said, I made the best of the situations that were given to me. That a lot of people had a few incidents, and I managed to keep the start of my sprint race relatively clean. No silly mistakes by myself. And yeah, then I noticed I was I think it was P13 at one point. And I just tried to settle into a groove, but it's very hard in a very short race.
Oh, indeed. With only 12 minutes of racing there and the pace really and the pressure being on you all the way through, it was a fantastic result and set yourself up quite nicely for the feature race, albeit not the way you wanted to start the feature with that spin into turn number 1.
No. Unfortunately, I got clipped by someone behind me, which they've apologised for, but that's racing at the end of the day. Racing is there's always a chance you're going to get knocked from an error that isn't anyone's fault. So I just picked myself back up and tried to chase the pack, realised I was a bit quicker than the cars in front of me, and just got my head down and went for it. And then unfortunately, me and my teammate had a slight coming together. He braked and I didn't judge where he was going to brake and nudged him, which caused him to go over the X limit to get drive through. And then 2 corners later, I got one as well.
Well, it was unfortunate, but for a time we did see all the colours of the ATEC Racing team spectrum of what was purple side and red together. Yourself, Hatcher and Pigger all racing in a line. And I do have to ask, with there being 3 teams on the grid this season, is there a little bit of rivalry down the ATEC camp in terms of you're all trying to get one over each other?
We all know who in the team that we're roughly the same pace as. Obviously, Sean's new to the team, and I've raced against him in other leagues. Me and Ali are roughly on the same level, but we always seem to have a coming together every time that we've raced. We have a coming. The one I wanted to get up to and catch was the boss of the team, which is Glenn, because me and him are very close on pace. It's tenths of a second sometimes. But yeah, there is definitely in-team rivalry, but it's never. If we're racing for position to better the team, as much as we want to do one over on the other guy, we tend to just back off and put the team first.
Oh, understandable, and that's a great ethic for the team and yourself to have in terms of team first, but also that little bit of rivalry and wanting to match one another, if not surpass one another on pace. And, well, focusing on your opening round today, of course, and the combination of results, a very strong start with a podium finish and a near top 5 finish as well. How do you feel about next week that's coming up with Interlagos? Can you carry that momentum forward?
Interlagos is a very funny circuit for me. Every car I've driven, I struggle with, but I did the officials in the Porsche Cup, and for some reason me and this car go quite well together around that circuit, so I'm quietly confident. I still will be putting the laps in and doing the practice, but I'm quietly confident I can keep the momentum going in the right way.
Well, I'm liking the sound of the quiet confidence. We do look forward to seeing how you get on in Brazil in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, Craig, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
I'll give a shout out to the team, because as much as we have the rivalry, we all have a good old laugh in Discord and we all support each other. And got to thank Glenn for bringing me on about 2 seasons ago. After we raced together. Family, if they're watching, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Partner for allowing me to sit in the sim rig all night long and not be elsewhere doing other things. So yeah, that's basically it. And yourselves for a great broadcast.
Well, I'm sure the team, your family, and also your partner will appreciate the kind words and the thank yous. But with that, Craig, thank you for joining us in the interview room. Congratulations on a superb way to start off your season, and we look forward to seeing you on circuit in a week's time.
Yes, thank you very much.
All the best. So that was Craig Shield we just heard from the ATEC Racing Team Cyan driver in the number 82 car. And upon his reflection there, saying about going into this season in a car which is not too well acquainted at, but at a circuit to kick off the season, which he does quite enjoy. And with that in mind for Craig, a brilliant set of performances with that P3 in the sprint race and the more pressured race, you could argue, in terms of you've got to deliver from the outset, really working out for him nicely. And whilst there's a little bit of a bump at the start of the second race day in the feature, which saw him tumble down the field, still some brilliant battling between himself and his ATEC Racing peers, and that team ethic's definitely going to shine through, I think, as we go deeper and deeper into the season, with the Cyan outfit as an individual outfit wanting to work together, and then of course the other sister or brother teams, if you will, of the different colours of the spectrum, all trying to push one another to greater performance and pace. But he's definitely going to be one to watch out for, Craig Shield, and you never know, we could have an outside championship contender already forming as he gradually gets himself more and more acquainted with the car and more comfortable in it, and I think he's going to be a weapon in Brazil. But with that in mind, we now get ready for our second interviewee of this evening, and it is going to be none other than Marcel Fritsch, our winner, of course, in race number 2, and our podium finisher in race number 1 in the gold class. And as we do wait to hear from him very shortly, in fact, we will just see if we can bring him on into the interview room. Alternatively, he's going to have to join us with the technical issues we are having. Give us a moment, ladies and gentlemen. But as we do wait for him to join us, Marcel Fritsch, of course, having a great start to his season with the 2 podium results, albeit a bit of a question mark hanging over him perhaps for what happened at the end of the second race. But still, I can see that it's all been settled quite nicely in the official UKSimRacing Discord. And as he does join me now, Marcel, appreciate you've been waiting some time and thank you for your patience, but what a way to start off your evening of racing. Indeed, your season of racing, the Porsche Cup Season 5, with a 3rd place in the sprint and then a win in the feature. You must be absolutely pleased with your performances.
Yeah, hello all. I'm very happy. I did think I have a quiet evening, and I'm new to the league, and I'm new to the car a little bit, and I want to only to drive and do nothing crazy. And they all went well until the last lap. Then the craziness starts.
Oh, indeed. Well, we'll come on to the craziness right at the end, of course, but let's start off with qualifying. And you're talking about having a quiet day of racing. Seems to be quite a quiet qualifying session from yourself, as I have to put more Q's in the sentence than I have in some time. But still, a solid performance in qualifying, right up there inside the top 10, and it was close in that top 10. P1 through to P8 only being separated by 0.8 of a second in the end.
Yes, qualifying is not my best thing to do. I always am very slow at qualifying. What I could drive. But today it was not so bad, and so I started 6th, I think, or about. And I only want to do nothing crazy. I only want to hit nobody and cause no mayhem. I only want to drive and learn the people, knowing how they drive and how the league is going.
Oh, indeed. And then coming on to, of course, the opening race of this evening, the sprint, we saw you have a relatively quiet start, but then make your way up the order gradually with all the battling going on around you. But in the end, a P3 finish. Was your intention always just to see where you fit into the field in terms of the pace, or were you really trying to push it and see if you could get not just onto the podium, but also the win?
No, I looked after the tires, and I want to see the pace of the other people, and if I was 5th or 1st, it was not my intention. I only want to drive and look after the tires and learn the car, and I think I did not overtake anybody in the first race. They all give me the place.
Oh, indeed. You had a safe and sound race number 1 and a 3rd place that was well earned. But then coming on to race number 2, and let's talk about your race start firstly. A reasonable start as we're watching it back at the moment on our live screens. But a quiet start at that, having started in what was P6 on the grid and only really gaining 1 place off the line. But as the race went on, you started to get a bit more into it, a bit more pace started to come on through as others made mistakes. Was that always the aim, to bring the pace in at the end of the race?
Yes, always I try to look for the tires, and especially in this car, after half an hour, the tires are not so good and many people make mistakes. And you can profit from this, and that's why I look for the tires to get the best of it in the second half of the race or the last lap.
Oh, indeed. And then as the race went on, of course, we saw Tim Darracott fall by the wayside. We saw Lee Holmes drop down the order with a mistake. And then it was the turn on the last couple of laps for the leaders to get very close together and for you to come on through. Just take us through that final lap from your perspective.
I had the best view for the battle, for the 2 leaders. And they went side by side, and I had a little feeling that something will happen. And it did, surely. by the first one. He tried to close the door, but I was there, and so I could sneak through to the second place. And with Joe had a problem with the chicane and was on the grass, and then he comes back to the racing line, but I didn't expect him to come back to the racing line, and so I come to the grass and we touched, and that's why I was on P1.
Well, indeed. Despite the contact between yourself and Koopmans firstly at the hairpin, as you described, and then the brief moment between yourself and Joe Newman, still fantastic racing between you, and it's been great to see how you guys have settled your differences already in a very friendly manner in the Discord itself. Of course, we can't show that on the screen, and we're not going to. But at the same time, good to see you guys keeping cool heads and whatnot. And, well, I think you've definitely set yourself up for a great pair of rivals going deeper into this season. Do you feel as though, with the win today in the third place, that you're up there, or is there still a lot of work to go?
Oh, it's a lot of work to go. I have to learn the car and the drivers here, and not always the luck is so on my side.
Oh, indeed. But with luck being on your side or not on your side, regardless, next time out we head to Brazil for the Interlagos circuit. How are you feeling for the visit to South America?
Yes, I love this course. I know it very good, and I think it will be a very interesting race because you can overtake to turn one. And there will be surely some special breakings and some excitement on the stream.
Well, I'd have to agree with you there. I think we're going to have a lot more room for overtaking and some major moments, like you say. But just before we do let you go, Marcel, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or say thank you to on the broadcast this evening?
I have to thank you, my sponsors, GT and VS Sports iRacing, all the team, and I also have to say thank you to this league that I can drive here, and I'm very impressed with the clean driving. I did many leagues before, but never I had a first race evening this clean, and so I'm very excited for the next race evenings.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant to hear, and we love the feedback from yourself, Marcel, and I'm sure your sponsors will appreciate the shout out. But with that, thank you for joining us in the interview room. Congratulations on your double podium and your win in the feature this evening, and we look forward to seeing you on circuit in a week's time.
Thank you. Bye.
All the best. So hearing there from Marcel Fritsch, the gold class driver for WS Racing Esports, with a brilliant set of results today. A third place in the sprint, both overall and in the gold class, and then the overall win and gold class win in the feature. Albeit a little bit of contact towards the very end of the feature race, but at the same time, you can hear it from his perspective there with regards to the moment both at turn number 5 with Koopmans, with the door gradually being shut, but he went on through, and also the moment coming out of his lot with Joe Newman. But still, all drivers are pushing hard, and with it being the final lap, you can understand they want to go for gold. Nobody wants to settle for second. But interesting to hear there from Marcel saying that he still feels as though there is a lot of work to do, and today has been a run of strong form, but also a degree of luck with many a driver dropping it over the course of the racing. But he was not to drop it at all, make any serious mistakes, protected the tyres, managed the car, and I definitely think he may have put himself as a bit of an underdog in terms of the championship. But if anything, I think he could really be the one to watch out for, because if you make a mistake, Mr. Fritsch is going to be there to take the points off you. There's no question about it. But as we now get ready for our third interviewee of this evening, it is going to be none other than Emil Koopmans, the gold class driver for Apex Missers. And of course the 911 driver who has had a very strong start to his season with better luck on his side as well, albeit you could argue missing out right at the end compared to what perhaps was on the table for him, but at the same time having a solid run of form. And as we get ready to speak to him, he'll be joining us very shortly in the interview room, as we just ask him to join us. But Emil Koopmans having that great run, albeit starting from quite a way back in the field. And here he is. He joins me in the interview room. Emil, a great way to start off your championship campaign. Of course, in Season 4, I did refer to you as Mr. Unlucky because you always seem to be the one driver with so much pace, but it never went right on the day. But today, it went right, and well, not just about that second place in the feature race, but also that drive from P18 in the sprint to end up P8 and reverse grid pole as a result of the sprint. You must be pleased with tonight.
Yeah, first of all, good evening, everyone. Yeah, I went into both races with, well, little expectations because I had quite a rough day before. So my head wasn't really into racing, but I wanted to have some, yeah, stress-free race. But my qualifying was, yeah, my first lap I had off tracks, and my second lap, after turn 12, I went sideways. For some reason, I didn't get an off tracker, so I managed to complete the lap, only qualified P18. That was, of course, not really good. So yeah, my first race was, yeah, as I said, I didn't expect too much from it, but yeah, I had such an amazing race. It was so much fun. Everybody was driving really nicely and cleanly. I had a couple of freebies, but I think I also had quite some nice overtakes. So yeah, and then all of a sudden, like after a couple of minutes, now with I think 3 minutes ago, I saw that there was P8. I was like, wait, isn't that pole position for the next race? So yeah, that was my first race.
Oh, I love it. The happy-go-lucky approach with regards to race number 1 after the difficult qualifying session. The fact that in the end you looked up to see it was P8. And well, with that in mind, of course, and now knowing you'd be on reverse grid pole for the purposes of the feature, did you change your outlook towards the feature race? Because we know, of course, these cars can be very tyre hungry over 30 minutes. Was there a particular approach you had in mind for the purposes of the feature, or was it just try and blast away from everyone?
A bit in between. Like, initially I saw I had the pace to make a little gap, so I thought like, yeah, if I push now, I can perhaps get a second or a second and a half gap. And then I wanted to start looking at after the tires. At least that was my idea. And at a certain point, I think it was incident behind me, so I had like 2.5 second gap. But then all of a sudden I started driving differently. I wanted to look after the tires, but yeah, for some reason it's when you have someone close behind you, I think it's easier than having a 2-3 second gap, because then all of a sudden you start to relax too much, and then I started making silly small mistakes, and yeah, then the gap got smaller lap by lap, and yeah, and at the end I thought like, oh, it goes decently again. But then of course, yeah, there was quite an eventful last lap.
Oh,
So,
most definitely.
yeah.
It was a very intense final lap. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, what did you want to say?
I was going to say, just take us through that final lap, because seeing yourself and Joe Newman run side by side through not just turn 1, but all the way through and into turn number 5, and then just the tiniest of lockups undermining all the hard work.
Yeah, I think just before the last lap, in the last corner, I had a little bit of oversteer, so Joe was able to, I think already on start finish, he was next to me a little bit. And then it was last lap, so I was like, yeah, well, let's just see how far we can go. And I think both of us raced with a lot of respect for each other. So yeah, we went sideways, like side by side through the first 5 corners, and then I think at corner 5, the hairpin, I think I looked at the replay. I cut into Joe a little bit too much, but there was also a little bit of netcode on my screen. So yeah, that was perhaps a little bit unlucky. And then I went sideways, and I just quickly wanted to get on track. And to be honest, I didn't even see Marcel. I just heard him say that I closed the door on him, but at that point I was just so frantically trying to get back on track that I hadn't seen him. So yeah, my apologies to Marcel, but luckily, yeah, he was able to pass me and go on, and so was I. So yeah, then I was in 3rd place, and then I know a lot of chaos still ensued. Joe missed the corner and tried to close the door on Marcel, and then I was next to Marcel again for like the last lap, but then in the last corner I had massive oversteer because it just goes over a slight crest, and yeah, that was it. Because before the last corner I still had the idea that I can still win if I can, yeah, get a nice exit, but yeah, unfortunately I wasn't able to.
Oh, indeed. But you gave it your all the way to the end. And if anything, this just goes to show, firstly, just how much pace you have at your fingertips. And we've always said it's there. You've just not been given the chance to show it. But also, bar that minor bit of bad luck right at the end going into turn number 5, as you say, that definitely some fantastic racing to be had. And I think you found yourself 2 very close rivals in the form of both Marcel Fritsch and also Joe Newman. And I have to ask, given your successes today, are you feeling a bit more upbeat for this season, hoping that there's not going to be that run of bad luck again?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the chances are that I have the same bad luck as I had previous season. So yeah, my chances are a bit better, but I think Marcel's incredibly quick. I think he only drove the Porsche Cup for a couple of weeks now, and so he will for sure get quicker as long as the season goes. Joe is always fast, and one of my teammates is also joining, Danny Hogendoorn, and he's also really quick. So yeah, I don't see myself winning the league, to be honest, but I'm definitely giving it my all, and hopefully I can finish on the podium.
Well, that's what we love to hear. And with our next venue, of course, being the Brazilian circuit of Interlagos, how are you feeling for the Sao Paulo circuit?
Actually, some good results in the officials there. So, yeah, looking forward to that. Actually, I think it's a really nice racing circuit. Oulton is as well, but I think Oulton is really difficult. I have a bit better feeling with Interlagos, so I'm actually looking forward to that. But I have to start practicing again because the officials has already been a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, we'll see if I can get some practice in and hopefully get up to pace again. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm cautiously optimistic about it. So.
Well, I'm liking the cautious optimism. We do look forward to seeing you lay down the rubber in Brazil in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, of course, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or say thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Well, actually, I want to say thank you to Matty and to you Matty for organizing an amazing league and you for an amazing broadcast. So.
Well, Emil, that's very kind of you to say, and we do appreciate the feedback and the positivity from yourself. But again, thank you to you for joining us this evening. Congratulations on your superb set of results, and we look forward to seeing you take on Brazil in a week's time.
See you there. Bye-bye.
All the best. So hearing it there from our third and final interview of the evening, Emil Koopmans, the gold class driver from Apex Missers, who after, as in his own words, a difficult qualifying session where with the laps there seemed to be a mistake that crept into each lap and didn't give him the opportunity to really lay down the time he wanted. Then he got his head down and in the sprint race just made his way up through the order, enjoyed the cleanness of the racing from the start, all the respect being shown, and in the end found his way up into P8 with a couple of, in his own words, freebies along the way. But still, you've got to take them when they arise, and by taking that P8, of course, he was our reverse grid pole sitter for round number 2. And in round number 2, pulling away at the start, but in the end, with the pressure building behind him, having to fight all the way to the conclusion with Joe Newman, but it was one small mistake and a little bit of bad luck into the turn 5 hairpin, which saw him go slightly off circuit, rejoined in the heat of the moment to have a bit of contact with Marcel Fritsch, and then brought it on back to P2 with Joe Newman and Fritsch coming together at the Hislop chicane. Definitely a dramatic end to the day of racing for Emil Koopmans, and still a brilliant result, and he's definitely one to watch out for as we continue the story at Brazil in a week's time. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that marks our third and final interview of the day. A fourth volunteer was not available, but you can understand. I think all of our drivers do want to get their rest after what's been some fantastic racing this evening. And, well, the tempo is going to be that high week in, week out. You can be sure it is going to be absolutely breathtaking come the conclusion of the season. But with that now, it is time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the UK sim racing community, then please feel free to check out firstly our official website, which you saw earlier. That is UKSimRacing.co.uk for all the latest information on the leagues we run and everything in between. Alternatively, if you're more inclined to use Twitter, you are always welcome to go to our official Twitter. That is twitter.com/UKSimRacing_ for all the latest bulletins regarding upcoming series and also what we as a esports esports team competing, such as the officials, including the Daytona 24 Hours, which is coming on up. Also, a big thank you to our affiliates. Our affiliates, of course, include Swello Meta Sim Racing Coaching, their YouTube address there, and Swello Meta, one of the #1 sources of coaching on iRacing in particular. And why should you listen to Swello Meta Sim Racing Coaching? Well, firstly, a multi-time winner in official iRacing series, including the Porsche Cup Series for 2021. Swello Meta does have the skill and the graft and is able to apply it in such a way in order to enable you to find a whole 10th of a second, a whole second, or just a better approach to your racing and driving style. There's a course for you and everyone in between, and Swello Meta Sim Racing Coaching is the #1 place to go to. On top of that as well, we do have Race Anywhere. And raceanywhere.co.uk is the place where you can find the provider of curated sim racing equipment, aiming to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. We've also got Demon Tweaks, that is demon-tweaks.com, the provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide. So no matter what your level of discipline, Demon Tweaks could help drive you to realise your motorsport ambitions, whether it's in the simulator or in the real world. And last but not least, we have Amazon, of course, their web address, amazon.co.uk, and Amazon is the company striving to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and Earth's safest place to work through the provision of concepts pioneered by Amazon, which include but are not limited to Fire tablets, Amazon Prime, and Amazon Alexa. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now look ahead to a week's time. We'll be back again for rounds 3 and 4 on Thursday, the 12th of January 2023. We're heading down to the South American continent, specifically to the city of Sao Paulo in Brazil, for the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache, for a circuit that needs no introduction. If you're looking for a circuit that has a little bit of everything and plenty of room for overtaking and battling all over the course, then this is the #1 place to go. And in the high altitude region of Sao Paulo, the question will be who can carry on their momentum from Oulton Park and deliver in a completely different style of circuit. Well, we'll find out all that in a week's time. But until then, we have been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.